they were continuously looking left to right doesn't mean that they didn't continuously look left to right. There's just no testimony to that effect.
But you don't know either way.
You're correct. I don't know either way.
And if they were continuously looking, making observations as they were crossing, you would agree that they would have also failed to meet their obligations in this case as well.
Objection to the form.
I would agree that they had to continue to look left or right, but I don't agree they maybe made a mistake as to how close the vehicle was. I don't expect that they would understand that distance and speed and things like that as they're crossing.
You have to answer my question. I didn't ask you if they understood. I said to you, if they did not make a determination, whether or not they were capable of making the correct determination is a different question, sir. So answer my question, because that way I understand it. Okay? So, if they fail to make those observations, continue to make observations for their own safety during the duration of their crossing the street, you would agree that they would also then share culpability with Ms. Patchett, correct?
Objection to the form.
Well, I'd have to agree with that, yes.
I'm sorry, what did he say? Court reporter, can you repeat his answer?
The answer was, I would have to agree with that, yes.
Okay, all right. Now, all right. Go ahead, Jake. If when they got to the curb, and you would agree that the duty to make observations, if they were wrong in assessing how long it was going to take for them to cross the street vis-a-vis the oncoming car that they saw, Ms. Patchet's car, they were wrong in that assessment when they got to the curb. Would they have some culpability along with Ms. Patchett for this incident?
Not if they believe that when they stepped off the curb. I mean, you're asking, I don't know if they're wrong. They don't know if they're wrong.
Answer my question.
You cut him off again. He hasn't finished his answer. The record will reflect how many words the witness got out of his mouth before counsel cut him off.
Right, the witness is not the witness.
You can't do that. Let him finish his answer.
Right. The witness. I'm going to start moving to strike his answer then, because he's clearly something.
His answer.
Right. Sir, if they got to the curb and they thought, you know what, I could make it. I have enough time. But it turned out that in fact, because of how fast they walked, try that. Would you agree that a reasonable person making the determination at the point of the curb before they started crossing the street would consider a number of factors to determine whether or not it's safe to cross at a crosswalk at that time?
What factors are you?
Well, you're the expert. You tell me. What factors would you look for to determine? Start that. I'll tell you what. I'll throw out some factors. You tell me if these are things you would consider. Right? Would a reasonable person crossing the street consider whether it was night or daytime as part of the factors that they take into account to determine if it's safe to do so when they see an oncoming car coming?
Whether it's night or day, yes, I believe the reasonable factor.
Would a reasonable person consider the type of road that they're crossing to determine whether or not it's safe to do so?
Well, it's tough to answer that question because I don't know that a reasonable person understands the types of roads like I might or you and I might.
Again, you're not answering. So, would a reasonable person, I just want to understand the testimony because this is, you're telling me today that a reasonable person wouldn't know the difference between a 4-lane road, 45 miles an hour, versus crossing the back road with
think you're mischaracterizing my testimony.
Okay, well then answer my question.
Go again. For about the fifth time, please let the witness finish his answers.
All right, stop yelling. Stop yelling.
I have never seen a lawyer cut off a person's answers like this. I'm sorry. Please stop doing it.
Let's not start talking. First of all, I fully disagree with your characterization that I'm cutting them off. Second of all, Fred, let's not start talking about I've never seen lawyers do, because I've never seen a lawyer tell me that a report isn't supposed to have the four corners of the opinion, okay? So, just please, you're getting close to that. Please, object to form and let's move on. Sir, would you agree that a reasonable person would and should know the difference between a two-lane road, 25 miles an hour speed limit, versus a state road that's 45 miles an hour? They should know the difference between those two facts, right?
I don't think the average reasonable person knows the difference between comparing two-lane roads. Whether or not New Jersey Avenue is a state highway or not, it's a two-lane road. So I don't believe that would necessarily enter into the reasonable person's thought process of crossing
Did
roads.
drive on this road before they parked?
I believe they did, yes.
So would a reasonable person who just drove on that road know that it was 45 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour, whatever the speed limit was?
The speed limit was 40 miles an hour, and I would expect they would know that, yes.
Okay. And would you agree that a reasonable person in crossing the road they just drove on should know that it's a 40 mile an hour speed limit?
I would expect.
Okay, so the answer to that question is yes. A reasonable person who just drove on a road that's 40 miles an hour should know when they park their car and go to cross it, that they're crossing a 40 mile an hour road, right?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. Another factor. Would you agree that a reasonable person should take into account their familiarity with the road they're crossing as when determining whether or not it's safe to cross a road with oncoming traffic, as was the case in this case?
Objection to form.
Can you just read the question back, Jennifer?
Would you agree that take into account their familiarity with the road they are crossing when determining if it is safe to cross the road with oncoming traffic?
Okay, thank you for from there. Would you agree that a reasonable person? It's okay. You can answer the question, there, Brad.
Just clarification, you're asking me if they're familiar with the road or not. Does that factor into the decision?
I'm asking you if a reasonable person decides to cross the street, right? The fact that it's a street they're familiar with or unfamiliar with, is that something they should take into the calculus of determining is it safe to cross?
Yes.
Okay. And the more familiar you are with it, that should make you feel more confident in adjudicating how fast things are moving and the safety, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the more you're unfamiliar with a road, the more careful you should be, and more cautious you should be crossing it, correct?
All right, correct.